I used to believe that weddings were sacred beginnings wrapped in lace and hope, a place where love stood tall in front of everyone you cherished and declared itself unbreakable. I was 28 years old, standing on the threshold of what I thought was my forever. My name is Lily, and for most of my life, I dreamed of the moment I would walk down the aisle, the music swelling every eye on me, and the man waiting at the altar smiling with devotion. But the truth is, the night before my wedding, I found out that the man I thought would love me until death was already planning my humiliation. But alongside the heartbreak came something else: rage. A cold, steady rage that slowly dried my tears and stiffened my spine. He thought I was weak, easy to discard, a prop for his performance. He thought my love blinded me. He thought wrong. One evening, I visited the old family garden again, the place where Anna and I had last faced each other. The roses were wilting, their petals littering the ground. I knelt, running my fingers through the soil, and whispered to the ghost of our childhood. Where did we go wrong? The silence offered no answer. By the time the trial date was set, I was exhausted. My ex-fiancé faced charges for fraud, theft, and conspiracy. Anna was implicated, though her lawyers fought to minimize her role. The women he had hurt gathered as witnesses, each ready to tell their story. And me, I stood at the center of it all, not just a witness, but the spark that had ignited the fire. Yet beneath the armor of resolve, doubt gnawed at me. Had I truly won, or had I simply traded one prison for another, the prison of being forever defined by betrayal and revenge? That question haunted me as I prepared to step into court to face him and Anna one final time. Because the climax of my story wasn't just about their downfall, it was about whether I could rise from the ashes without letting the fire consume me completely. The courthouse loomed gray and unforgiving, its steps crowded with reporters clutching microphones, their eyes hungry for drama. As I walked past them, their voices rose, shouting questions I didn't care to answer. Do you regret exposing him? Were you motivated by revenge or justice? What do you say to those who call you bitter? Each word stung, but I kept my head high. I wasn't here for their approval. I was here to close a chapter. Inside, the air was heavy with tension. I saw him seated at the defense table, his once proud posture slouched, his suit hanging loose as if even fabric refused to cling to him now. His eyes flicked up to meet mine, angry, hollow, desperate. Beside him sat Anna, my cousin, my sister in spirit turned enemy. She avoided my gaze, her face pale, her hands trembling despite her carefully rehearsed composure. When the proceedings began, the evidence spoke louder than any testimony. Transfers, recordings, photos, testimonies from Clara and other women, all laid bare in front of strangers who now judged him not as a charming groom, but as a predator. Each piece of proof was like a stone added to the pile, crushing him. But it wasn't just him. Anna's name echoed in the documents, in the transactions she had accepted, in the whispers of complicity. She flinched each time her role was mentioned, her lawyer scrambling to paint her as naive, manipulated. But I knew the truth. She hadn't been tricked. She had chosen greed over blood. When it was my turn to testify, I walked to the stand with trembling legs but a steady heart. The judge asked me to recount the night before my wedding, the words I had overheard. I spoke clearly, my voice carrying the memory of every wound, every humiliation. I described the laughter, the mockery, the way he had called me an investment. My voice cracked, but I didn't falter. I wanted the court to hear not just the facts, but the devastation he had left behind. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at the desk, staring at the invitation cards, the vows I had written in careful cursive, the pearl earrings my mother had given me as something old. Betrayal has a way of rewiring you in an instant, turning innocence into clarity. By dawn, I knew I could not walk away quietly. If he wanted a show, I would give him one, but not the one he imagined. Then I turned my eyes to Anna. She wouldn't look at me. The betrayal I suffered wasn't just from him, I said quietly. It was from family. From someone who could have warned me, who could have stood by me, but instead sharpened the knife. And that wound is the one I will carry longest. The courtroom fell silent. For a moment, even the shuffle of papers stopped. I knew my words had landed not just on Anna, but on everyone present. The trial stretched on for days, each session peeling back another layer of deceit. In the end, the verdict came swift and sharp. He was found guilty on multiple counts of fraud and theft, sentenced to years in prison. Anna's role, though smaller, was undeniable. She received her own sentence lighter, but enough to mark her name forever. As the gavel struck, a strange emptiness washed over me. I had waited for this moment, imagined it, even craved it, but instead of triumph, I felt hollow. Revenge had given me fire, but fire leaves ashes, and I was standing in the soot. When I stepped outside, the reporters swarmed again, their cameras flashing. But this time I paused. I looked straight into one lens and spoke not to them but to the world beyond. I didn't do this because I wanted revenge, I said steadily. I did this because silence lets predators thrive. Because women deserve to be believed, to be safe, to be more than someone's investment. If that makes me bitter, then I embrace bitterness. Because it is better than being broken. The cameras clicked, and for once I didn't care what story they would spin. In the weeks that followed, the dust slowly settled. My father still struggled with his pride, his obsession with appearances. We spoke little, but one evening he came to me in the garden. His voice was low, unsteady. I was wrong. He admitted, the words foreign in his mouth. I should have stood by you. I see that now. Tears pricked my eyes. It wasn't a full healing, but it was a start. My mother hugged me tight that night, whispering that she had never stopped believing in me. For the first time in months, I felt a sliver of home returning. As for Anna, I haven't seen her since the sentencing. Her absence is a scar I trace often, a reminder that family can betray as deeply as lovers. I don't know if I will ever forgive her. Some wounds are too deep for forgiveness. But I do know I will not let her betrayal define me. The morning of the wedding, I painted my face with calm. My bridesmaids fluttered around me, pinning my veil, adjusting my gown, oblivious to the storm inside me. My mother's eyes shone with tears, whispering how proud she was, how this was the happiest day of her life. I smiled at her, swallowing the lump in my throat, and promised myself I would not let his betrayal taint her joy. She deserved better than that. So did I. Clara and I stayed close. Together, we turned our pain into purpose. We started an organization for women deceived and manipulated, a safe space to share stories, seek help, and rebuild lives. Each time I sat with another woman listening to her pain, I felt less alone. My suffering had birthed something stronger than revenge. It had birthed resilience. One evening, standing in the garden where everything had once broken, I realized something profound. Revenge is not about watching someone fall. It is about rising from the wreckage they left behind. It is about reclaiming your voice when others tried to silence it. It is about walking forward scarred but unbroken. And so I share this story with you now, not because I want pity, but because I want you to remember betrayal may cut you down, but it does not have to bury you. Family may fail you. Lovers may deceive you, but your strength is yours alone. And when you choose truth over silence, when you choose dignity over fear, you are already free. If my story touched you, if you saw pieces of your own struggle in mine, I ask you to stand with me. Like this video, so others might hear it, share it, so another woman might find courage. Subscribe to my channel to join this community, and leave a comment with your story, because every voice matters, and together our voices cannot be erased. As I stood before the mirror, I didn't see a broken bride. I saw a woman reborn in fire. The lace hugged my body, but beneath it was armor. My reflection's eyes no longer glistened with hope, they burned with resolve. He thought I would stand at the altar and give him my loyalty. Instead, I would give him his downfall. The ceremony began like any other. Guests filled the pews, whispering and smiling, their faces glowing with anticipation. The organ played softly, the air fragrant with roses. He stood at the altar, handsome in his tailored suit, his smile wide, his posture proud. To anyone else, he looked like the perfect groom. But to me, he looked like a stranger, a liar, a man already undone. When it was my turn to speak, I held his gaze. The silence stretched, everyone expecting vows of love. My voice, when it came, was calm, steady, but laced with steel. I was going to promise you forever, I said softly, my words echoing through the hushed hall. But last night I learned the truth. You see, forever means nothing to a man who already betrayed me before the wedding even began. Gasps rippled through the crowd. His face paled, his smile faltered. I turned, addressing not just him, but everyone gathered. He told his friends I was temporary, that I was just an investment, that his real life would continue behind my back. He mocked me. Mocked all of you. Murmurs rose like a wave, eyes darting between us, disbelief and shock colliding. My mother clutched my father's arm, her face stricken. His groomsmen shifted uncomfortably, their smirks evaporating. He stammered, reaching for me. "Lily, it's not." It was late, the rehearsal dinner over the hotel quiet, except for the hum of the elevators and the faint murmur of voices spilling from the bar. I had left my shawl in one of the side rooms and slipped away to fetch it. That's when I heard his voice, familiar, low, confident, in a way that once made me feel safe. Now it froze me in place. But I stepped back. "Don't. You had your chance to speak truth. Now it's my turn." And in that moment, I unveiled everything. The texts I had secretly forwarded to myself when I suspected him months ago. The photographs of him with another woman, smug in his certainty I'd never see. The recordings from last night captured on my phone as I pressed against the wall, my heart shattering with every word. The hall erupted. Gasps turned to shouts, whispers to cries. His parents buried their faces in their hands. My bridesmaids covered their mouths in horror. The weight of evidence hung in the air like thunder, undeniable. I looked at him one last time. Not with love, not with hate, but with finality. I am not your investment. I am not your temporary. I am the woman you underestimated. And today, instead of binding my life to yours, I'm setting myself free. The silence that followed was heavier than any vow. I turned my train sweeping behind me and walked down the aisle, not as a bride abandoned, but as a woman unbroken. And though the roses still smelled sweet, the day was no longer about him. It was about me reclaiming my power in front of everyone who once doubted my strength. But the story doesn't end at the altar, because betrayal like his has roots deeper than one night, and revenge once lit burns longer than anyone expects. As I walked away from the altar, my heart thundered louder than the organ ever could. My heels clicked against the marble floor, each step breaking the rhythm of tradition, each echo carrying the weight of defiance. Behind me, the hall dissolved into chaos. Guests gasping, voices rising, my groom stammering as his perfect facade crumbled before the crowd. When I pushed open the great wooden doors, sunlight poured over me like a benediction. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt free. Yet freedom, I quickly learned, is not weightless. It drags behind you the questions, the stares, the wounds you cannot hide. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I checked into a small inn on the other side of town. My mother called me repeatedly, her voice trembling, begging me to come back. My father, stern but shaken, left only one message: "We'll talk when you're ready." I could hear his disappointment under the words, as if I had dragged our family name through the mud by speaking the truth. It was the first of many wounds I would carry, not just from betrayal by a man I loved, but from the silence of those who should have stood beside me. "Don't worry," he laughed. "She's just the kind of girl who'll put up with anything. I'll keep her happy long enough, then move on. You know how it is." Sleep didn't come easily. Every time I closed my eyes, I replayed his laughter with his friends, his smirk as he called me an investment. I thought of all the moments I had swallowed my doubts, silenced my instincts, convinced myself that real love meant endurance. How many times had I ignored the ache in my gut, the red flags fluttering like warning signals? I had wanted so desperately to believe in the fairy tale that I let myself become the fool in his story. By morning, exhaustion pressed heavy on me, but so did clarity. I realized the wedding wasn't just a performance he staged for me, it was a performance for the whole community. He wanted the prestige of being a groom, the admiration of family, the photographs that would paint him as a man of commitment. Underneath, he was already planning my humiliation. And humiliation, once tasted, becomes a poison you cannot spit out. When I finally returned to my parents' home, the atmosphere was thick with unspoken blame. My mother embraced me fiercely, her tears soaking my hair. But my father's eyes were hard, his jaw tight. "You could have handled it privately," he said, voice low, clipped. You shamed him in front of everyone. You shamed us. The words struck me harder than my ex-fiancé's betrayal. Shamed us, I whispered. He betrayed me. He lied to all of you. Why am I the one carrying this? But my father looked away, unwilling to answer. That silence told me everything in his eyes' appearances were worth more than truth. And suddenly I understood how betrayal burrows deeper than romance. It seeps into blood, into the family that raised you, twisting loyalty into silence. The days turned into weeks. Invitations were returned, gossip spread like wildfire, neighbors whispered in grocery aisles. I became the bride who walked away, my story twisted in 100 cruel ways. Some said I had cold feet. Others claimed I made it up to avoid commitment. Few believed the truth because the truth was too ugly to fit neatly into their version of love. I tried to move forward. I took long walks through the park, forcing myself to breathe in the scent of lilacs, to watch children laugh, to remember life still existed outside betrayal. But every laugh felt distant, every flower wilted before my eyes. I felt like a ghost haunting my own life, replaying memories that refused to die. Then one evening I received an envelope slipped under my door. No return address. Inside was a photograph my ex-fiancé with another woman, his hand possessive on her waist, his smile careless and free. Scrawled across the back in a feminine hand, he promised me forever, too. I stared at the words until they blurred. My hands shook, rage flaring hot and raw. It wasn't just me. He had left a trail of broken promises, of women discarded like trinkets once he was done. Suddenly, my humiliation didn't feel so personal. It was a pattern, a cycle he thrived on. That night, I began digging. I searched old emails, his social media, the scraps of conversation I once ignored. Piece by piece, the truth unraveled. There were others, some in different cities, some close to home. Women he had charmed, used, mocked. I wasn't an exception. I was part of his collection. At first, I thought my ears betrayed me. I pressed myself against the wall, heart pounding, straining to hear. Then came the words that shattered me. The realization was both devastating and liberating. Devastating because it meant my love had been a lie from the start. Liberating because I was no longer alone. His cruelty was bigger than me, and cruelty that big cannot go unpunished. But revenge is not born in one moment. It simmers. It grows slowly, curling around your ribs, reshaping your grief into strategy. I didn't know how or when, but I knew one thing with certainty: I would not let him walk away untouched. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. A family friend mentioned he was already courting another wealthy woman, a young heiress whose parents owned properties abroad. The thought of him smiling, charming, preparing another stage for his deception made bile rise in my throat. I imagined her standing where I once stood, her heart breaking under the weight of his betrayal, and I couldn't let it happen. So I reached out to the woman who had sent me the photograph. Her name was Clara, and when we met in a small cafe, I saw the same haunted look in her eyes that stared back at me in the mirror. She told me her story, how he had promised her marriage, how he had drained her savings under the guise of business investments, how he vanished the moment she questioned him. As she spoke, I realized my revenge wasn't just about me anymore. It was about justice, about ending his cycle before another woman fell into his web. Betrayal may have broken me, but together Clara and I could turn that brokenness into something sharper than any vow retribution. We began gathering evidence: old text messages, bank transfers, photographs, recordings. Piece by piece, we built a case not just against him as a fiancé, but as a fraud. The deeper we dug, the more shocking it became. He wasn't just a liar, he was a predator feeding on trust, twisting love into a currency for his own gain. Each discovery reignited my wounds, but it also strengthened my resolve. For the first time since the wedding, I felt a flicker of power in my chest. He thought I would fade into silence, a humiliated bride forgotten by the world. Instead, I was becoming the architect of his downfall. But betrayal is never simple. As we moved closer to exposing him, I discovered something that chilled me to my core. One of his allies, the person who had vouched for him most fiercely during our engagement, was not a distant friend. It was my cousin, someone I had trusted like a sister. She had known about his affairs. She had laughed at his jokes. And worse, she had profited from them. That night, staring at the evidence in my hands, I realized the betrayal wasn't just from a groom who mocked me. It was rooted deeper in family ties that had frayed into greed. And suddenly, revenge wasn't just a choice, it was survival. The night I discovered my cousin's involvement, the air in my room felt too heavy to breathe. Betrayal by a lover wounds you one way, but betrayal by blood, it cuts with a blade you never see coming. My cousin Anna had been my confidant growing up, the one I whispered secrets to at sleepovers, the one who held my hand at funerals, the one who told me we were sisters in all but name. And now she was another thread in the web of deceit. She'll never suspect. She's so desperate to belong. Honestly, marrying her is just convenient. My real fun doesn't stop. I wanted to deny it, to believe I had misread the evidence. But the transfers were there in black and white money funneled from his accounts to hers. The text messages told the rest. She had introduced him to wealthy circles, vouched for his honor, and laughed at my expense when he mocked me behind closed doors. That night, memories of Anna flooded me. Her smile at my engagement party, her arms around me, as she whispered how happy she was for me, the way she had insisted on helping me pick the lace for my gown. All of it curdled into poison. She had known I was walking into a trap, and she had tightened the snare herself. For days I kept my distance, letting the rage simmer. I continued meeting with Clara, piecing together the puzzle of his schemes. But my thoughts circled back to Anna again and again. Betrayal burns hotter when it comes from those who wear the mask of love. It was during one of our late-night meetings that Clara looked at me across the table, her eyes steady. "What do you want to do with all this?" I swallowed hard, staring at the pile of evidence spread before us. "I want to end him, not just humiliate him, not just expose him. I want to take everything he built on lies and set it on fire." Clara nodded slowly. "Then we'll need allies, people who have been burned like us." So we began reaching out carefully, discreetly. And soon a pattern emerged: other women, other victims. A trail of heartbreak and ruin. Some had lost money, some had lost years of their lives, but all carried scars. Together we formed something stronger than grief, a coalition of the betrayed. Each story fueled the fire inside me. One woman described how he had promised her marriage only to vanish after draining her savings. Another confessed she had nearly lost her home because of his false investments. Listening to them, I realized he wasn't just a selfish man, he was a predator thriving on women's silence. And silence was the one gift I refused to give him anymore. But the closer we drew to unveiling him, the more dangerous it felt. Anonymous notes appeared under my door, warnings to stop, threats veiled in polite language. Once I found my car tires slashed outside the cottage where I'd taken refuge, and I knew he was watching me. Yet even then, Anna's betrayal stung deeper. When I confronted her, it was in the old family garden, the place where we had once built forts and whispered dreams of the future. She stood there, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. Laughter erupted around him. His friends, the groomsmen, the men I thought would stand beside him as witnesses of love, egged him on. Someone asked about money, and he replied casually, "Oh, she's not rich, but her parents are bending over backward to pay for this circus. It's perfect. I get the show without the cost. She's an investment, really." "How long?" I demanded, my voice trembling. "How long have you known what he was doing?" Her lips curled into a half smile. "Long enough. And honestly, Lily, I thought you'd figure it out sooner. You always were too naive." The words struck me like stones. Naive. You let me walk into that marriage knowing he was using me. She shrugged, her indifference colder than anger. You weren't listening. You never do. He gave me opportunities, connections. And what did you ever give me? Pity. You always thought you were better, Lily. This time, I chose the winning side. Something inside me broke then. Not the fragile kind of breaking that leaves you sobbing, but the sharp kind, the kind that carves resolve into your bones. I saw her for what she was: not a cousin, not a sister, but another enemy, cloaked in familiarity. I walked away that day with tears burning my eyes but fire in my chest. If she wanted to stand on his side, she would fall with him. The plan unfolded slowly, meticulously. Clara and I worked with the other women, gathering every piece of evidence into a single damning collection. We spoke with lawyers, journalists, even law enforcement officers willing to listen. The weight of proof grew heavier, undeniable. But I knew exposure alone wouldn't satisfy me. He had humiliated me at the core of my being, stripped me bare in front of my family and community. My revenge had to be more than legal, it had to be personal. So I devised something bolder. He was planning another grand engagement, this time with the heiress, his next target. The family had already begun preparations for an opulent party, and I decided that party would become his undoing. In the weeks leading up to it, I pretended silence. To the outside world, I was the scorned bride retreating from the spotlight. My father believed I had learned my lesson about public scenes. My mother begged me to focus on healing. Even Anna, smug and confident, thought I had given up. None of them suspected that beneath my quiet exterior, I was weaving the threads of his downfall. The night of the party arrived. The venue was a glittering ballroom, chandeliers sparkling above, champagne flowing freely. Guests in gowns and tuxedos laughed and mingled, oblivious to the storm brewing at the edges of the room. I slipped in quietly, my presence unnoticed at first. I wore black, not the white of a bride, but the armor of a woman no longer playing his game, an investment. That's what I was to him. Not a partner, not a wife, a temporary amusement dressed in white. When he stepped onto the stage to toast his future, his arm draped around the heiress's waist, my pulse quickened. The crowd raised their glasses, smiling at the perfect picture of love and wealth. But I knew the truth, and soon so would they. I moved to the front, my heels striking the polished floor. A hush fell as people recognized me. Murmurs rippled. "Is that Lily? What is she doing here?" He froze when he saw me, his smile faltering, his eyes narrowing. But I didn't stop. I climbed the steps, turned to face the crowd, and let my voice ring clear. "Before you celebrate this union," I said, my words slicing through the music and laughter, "you deserve to know the truth. The man standing before you is not a fiancé. He is a liar, a predator, and a fraud." Gasps erupted. The heiress's parents stiffened, their smiles curdling into shock. He tried to seize the microphone, but I stepped back, holding up my phone. With a single press, the ballroom filled with voices, recordings of his laughter, his confessions, his cruel mockery of me, of Clara, of every woman he had deceived. The sound echoed through the chandeliers, bouncing off the marble, impossible to ignore. And as the evidence poured out, photos, transfers, messages projected on the screen behind me, the perfect image he had built collapsed into rubble. The heiress's face went pale. She stepped back from him, her eyes wide with disgust. His parents looked stricken, their reputations crumbling alongside his. The crowd's whispers swelled into outrage, disbelief, condemnation. And I stood there not as the humiliated bride he had once mocked, but as the woman who had risen from the ashes of his betrayal to burn his empire of lies to the ground. But even then, I knew the story wasn't over. Because revenge is never just about the moment of exposure. It's about what follows, the wreckage, the silence, the scars left behind. And sometimes it's about the betrayals waiting in the shadows, still unexposed. The ballroom was no longer a celebration, it was a battlefield. The chandelier light that once glimmered warmly now seemed harsh, exposing every lie that had been woven into the fabric of the evening. Guests whispered in huddles, some clutching their pearls, others shaking their heads in disbelief. The heiress's father stormed out, his face flushed with fury, dragging his daughter behind him. And there he stood, my ex-fiancé, his jaw clenched, his composure unraveling with every passing second. I remember gripping the edge of the wall so tightly my nails bent back. My breath came in short, harsh bursts. The lace of my rehearsal dress suddenly felt suffocating, as if it had become a costume for a role I no longer believed in. I slid silently back down the corridor, every step heavier than the last. When I reached my room, I locked the door and collapsed to the floor, my body trembling with a grief so deep it felt like drowning. I expected him to shout, to deny, to fight. But instead he laughed, a brittle, hollow laugh that didn't reach his eyes. "You think this will ruin me?" He sneered, his voice sharp enough to pierce the silence. "People like me don't fall, Lily. You'll see." The arrogance in his words chilled me, but it also told me something vital. He was terrified. He wore bravado like armor, but I saw the cracks forming. For the first time, I realized he wasn't invincible. He was fragile, desperate to hold together the empire of lies he'd built on the backs of others. Security escorted me out not long after. They were polite, almost apologetic, as if they knew I wasn't the villain of the night. As I walked into the cool air, a strange calm settled over me. I had done it. I had torn away his mask in front of the world he sought to impress. But instead of triumph, a hollow ache spread through me. Revenge was fire, but fire leaves ashes behind. When I returned home, my father was waiting. He sat in his armchair, stiff as stone, his hands gripping the wooden arms so tightly I thought they might splinter. My mother hovered nearby, wringing her hands, her eyes darting nervously between us. "What were you thinking?" my father demanded, his voice low and seething. "Do you realize what you've done to this family? To our name?" I blinked at him, stunned. "What I've done?" He lied, he cheated, he conned people, and I exposed him. "Why are you angry at me?" "Because you did it in public," he roared, slamming his hand against the chair. "You made a spectacle. Our relatives, our community. Everyone will remember this scandal. Do you think they'll see you as a hero? No. They'll see you as the bride who ruined her own wedding and dragged her family through the mud." My mother flinched, tears slipping down her cheeks. She was protecting herself, she whispered, but my father silenced her with a glare. The weight of his words pressed down on me, heavier than any accusation my ex-fiancé had thrown. My own father cared more about appearances than my survival, and in that moment I felt another betrayal etch itself into my bones. "I won't apologize," I said quietly, my voice trembling, but resolute. "Not for saving myself. Not for refusing to stay silent while he destroyed others. If that makes me a disgrace in your eyes, so be it." For hours I sat in the dark, the city lights bleeding through the window, my mind spinning. I thought of all the moments we had shared, his proposal under the stars, the way he used to tuck my hair behind my ear, the letters he once wrote me when we were long distance. Were they all lies? Had he been laughing at me all along, seeing me as nothing more than a gullible girl desperate for love? He turned away, his silence louder than any condemnation. And I realized then that some betrayals are not dramatic. They are quiet, subtle, born in the absence of support when you need it most. Days passed, and the fallout grew. The heiress's family pressed charges for fraud. The police began investigating his financial dealings, and newspapers picked up whispers of the scandal. His face, once admired, became infamous. He avoided public places, and those who once called him friend distanced themselves quickly. But with every headline, my name appeared beside his: the jilted bride, the scorned woman, the drama queen. I tried to ignore the whispers, but they clung to me. In the grocery store, I felt the stares. At church, I heard the murmurs. People love a scandal, but they rarely love the woman who exposes it. It was Clara who kept me steady. She reminded me of the bigger picture, that our actions had saved others, that his downfall was justice, not vengeance. Yet even she admitted the toll it took. "Revenge tastes sharp," she said one evening, sipping her tea. "But it never fills you." Her words echoed in my mind long after she left. Because she was right. Even as I watched him lose everything, even as Anna's smugness faltered when her involvement began to surface, I felt no peace. I had burned down the house of lies, but the smoke still clung to my lungs. And then came the letter, slipped under my door, unsigned but familiar. Anna's handwriting. "You think you've won, but you've only destroyed yourself. No one will ever see you as more than the bitter bride, and I'll make sure of it." I read the words over and over, the venom seeping into me. Rage surged, but beneath it was sorrow. How had the girl who once braided my hair, who cried with me under starry skies, turned into this? That night, I dreamed of the wedding again, the roses, the music, the aisles stretching endlessly. But this time, when I reached the altar, it wasn't him standing there. It was Anna, her smile cruel, her hand reaching for mine like a trap. I woke drenched in sweat, the nightmare lingering like a curse. The investigation into him deepened, and with it Anna's name surfaced. Transactions traced back to her accounts she couldn't explain, whispers of complicity. I thought it would break me to see her dragged down with him, but instead it hollowed me. Revenge had consumed not just him, but everyone tangled in his orbit. and now it was consuming me too.